I don't know what you're talking about.
All right. Welcome, everyone. It's good to see you once more. We have 4 amazing authors here joining us for this panel of basically, that's not a knife. This is a knife.
Terrible.
Oh man,
Oh,
But
that's
it's
pretty
more in the
sweet.
sense, but it's more in the sense of show, not tell. So, get your questions ready because these authors are totally ready here for it. But we're gonna have them introduce themselves. We're gonna start with Brian.
Damn it, I knew you'd do this. So, and yet didn't prepare. Okay, but I know who I am. So,
do you know who
Yeah,
you are?
sure.
tell me, Sandra, who am I?
You
Sorry.
never know who you are.
I should show you who I am. Sorry.
I don't.
This is
please
not a
don't.
romance panel. This is a fantasy sci-fi lit
Okay,
RPG panel.
princess.
I was gonna say this isn't that kind of after dark.
It's
type
whatever
of,
we make it.
It's
Please
7
don't show
p.m.
your body though.
I hope
that.
everyone's having a great Saturday. Brian.
I am Brian J. Norden. I am from Ireland. I wrote Quest Academy, which came out on July 18th of this year and is doing really, really well. That I
Really
am,
well.
I signed with Legion Publishers. That's Jez, and yeah, it's been Jez Geneva. Of course, it's been an absolute whirlwind of a journey for me. So just over 3 months out, and we're doing quite well on Amazon. So absolutely delighted with how all it's going. And book 2 went into edits were submitted about 8 hours ago after an all-nighter, which you can probably tell. So yeah, I'm good.
It doesn't show at all.
Thank
Oh,
you.
no.
Thank you.
You're still beautiful, Brian.
I appreciate you.
Good God.
All right. So we'll go with Michael.
Hi, I'm Michael Chatfield. I've got a couple of series going on. I just started a new series over on Royal Road called The Four Horsemen, which will be coming out on Amazon in a bit. But we're going to be releasing it on Royal Road to start, and we will be staying on Royal Road. I know a lot of before we've been doing stubs. I kind of don't like doing the stub thing because it's kind of crappy, but it will be only the rough version on Royal Road. So then we're doing everything else. But yeah, all right, sci-fi, fantasy, lit RPG, and talking about all things show and tell, which feels like I'm if I say it that way, it sounds like I'm back in like grade 3 and just here's my dinosaur. But I guess that kind of is what we are doing with RPG. Anyway.
Is that what you call it, Michael? Your dinosaur?
Yeah.
Are you flirting with us?
Oh goodness.
Right,
It's
it's
a
like
little
a
too
Go
T-Rex
scaly.
right
without the arms.
ahead. All right. So Nathan, let's hear from you.
I'm Nathan Amy. I have one published trilogy called the Fey Nexus Trilogy. It's a post-apocalyptic lit RPG set in the Ozarks. So it's rednecks caught in a demon apocalypse. And the Ozarks is where I grew up, so I wrote what I knew and had fun. It's kind of crafty. It has a redneck wizard as the main character. I had a lot of fun with it. I learned a lot, and I'm excited about my next project as well.
That's not what he was talking about, though.
Oh God. So that's me.
I guess I'm next because I'm last. My name is Xander Boyce. I wrote.
Only for a moment.
I wrote the Red Mage. Currently, there's 3 books in the Red Mage series, and then I've written a book called Tall Rock, which is the first in the Farming Livia book series, and then I've got a book called Freshman Drive, which is a basketball lit RPG, more of a sci-fi thriller, cloak and dagger type book. And then I'm from all over, served in the Coast Guard, and been doing this for about 6 years now. So
Okay. So we're gonna just jump right into it. So what is your process to put in the heads of your audience what is in your own mind? Like, how do you as an author write in such a way that they can envision it? And I think I'm going to start with Michael on this one.
Thank you.
So I think the biggest thing to do is it depends on kind of how you present it in the biggest way. The way I try to do it is define the area that they're in. So I scene set. So scene setting of like, okay, we're in a warehouse. It's run down, decrepit. You see on the floor that the concrete is so old that it's starting to come apart. There's stains of old machinery, but that's already been gone, either looted or whatever. You see like where the bolts are being like cut off of the ground. Now that's stage one, and that's you've made the stage in your mind, and you have the actions that your characters are going to do. And then part two is essentially going, okay, now these characters are doing actions, and those actions are going to be a mirror of the place that they're in, so that you go, like he stubs the character one stubs his toe on the ground because he's kicking at like the concrete that's peeling away, and he hits, just the stub of like some bolts that have been, cut off with a saw or something, right? And then the other one's like, wow, like this place has seen some better days. And, like they're having a conversation, but maybe it's a tense conversation because they're like exploring the environment around them to try and distract from that conversation that they're actually having. Like they're looking out at the sky and through the holes in the roof and all that kind of stuff. But they're like saying that interlinked with how it like what's around them. So that's how you can get a bit more telling a person around the area than showing. But like I kind of like, I guess I layer it is how I do it. But yeah.
Absolutely.
So do you do that all in the first draft, or is that pre-first draft, or is that?
So my brain works very much of if I see a place once, it's imprinted in my brain. So I'll see like a floor. If I needed to, I could write out a floor plan. So it's like, okay, my characters are doing this. At the same time, I build out that floor plan. So I'm like, okay, it's this, and then I add like flavor, I guess, as I'm going. So it happens for me at the same time, but I know that I've had to break it down before to like kind of explain like this is what is actually going on. Of like, okay, well, we're in a forest, and then I think, okay, well, here's how the forest is and how like this person's moving through it, and then like add in some randomness, and then there you go, right? Because it's also you interact with your environment so much, right? Like I'm turning in my seat as I'm like talking because I'm turning to each of you on the computer screen, like moving my hands and stuff. It's your environment can reflect a lot of your moods and a lot of your thoughts.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think it's important to building on that idea. Like a person moving through a forest is an interesting example because I think it's also, to a degree, important to consider what the character is looking at and looking for. Because you could spend a million words describing a scene in a forest, and nobody wants to read all of those.
Hemingway would disagree with you.
Hemingway's
oh, it's so purple, it's indigo.
So I think it's important to consider your character, right? So is it a ranger? Is it a soldier? Is it a child lost in the forest? Like they're all going to see completely different things. And there's a balance to be had between what the character sees and things you might want the reader to know, which you might need to plant. So there's a balancing act to be done by the author there, I think, in making that come through correctly.
Yeah,
in some of those like lovely things where like POV has influenced your scene and also the knowledge that they're bringing through.
Yeah, so
I'm just gonna throw that one out.
Yeah, definitely. Like it's interesting when you're writing I write from a third person omniscient, so like the narrator knows things that the child doesn't, so or the person that's in it doesn't. But occasionally you'll have things where when I was writing Freshman Drive with Ryan DeBrune, we'd have moments where like the main character is kind of an idiot, and so he looks at things that he doesn't remember like how they interact. So he's like recalling a conversation. He's like thinking about like, you know, he can't remember terms like the Sword of Damocles or Occam's razor. So he says things like the occultist like sword or the demon clay sword or stuff like that. So it's interesting to see like how those changing those perspectives, even if you have like an omniscient third person perspective, will like change and get you more into the character's point of view. But for me, adding show don't tell, I have to go through in my second draft. I add show don't tell because I'm not a visual person in my head, so I have to go through and be like, wait, other people want to like know what this actually looks like, as opposed to just describing. Like I know what it looks like in my head, but I have to go through and add actual descriptions and flavor text. I flavor text because I play a lot of D&D. Because it doesn't get in the first draft, so I have to like that's a very conscious part of my second draft process is going and adding in those like visual descriptors. But
yeah, it's usually it's like sometimes you can find that linking word, and that linking word is like, oh, I've actually gone into show don't tell. Okay, here's I think would be an interesting one. It's like, what's your rules of like where you're like, oh, I'm going to show this instead of tell this. Like which parts are you like, I gotta show this or I have to tell this? Ryan, you're being quiet. Sorry.
Sorry, I was just like, how long can I stay quiet before they notice? And I was just going to be like, maybe I'll ask Xander a really like, a thought-provoking question, then just like lean back. So, thank
that
you,
is very
Rachel.
super villain of you.
Yeah, but you said you weren't going to be here for this, Rachel. Oh, okay. So, question as in when do I actually step? So, to answer the first question, I suppose.
Daniel.
Hey, Daniel.
Yeah.
Daniel.
See, this is brilliant. All I have to do is just say names, and people just reflect. So, thing is, with show don't tell with myself, I pants everything, which is wonderful. And
Please
what
don't
I like,
pants me.
no. And I'm also incredibly lazy.
Oh, so you don't want to?
Yeah,
you don't want to cross the pond.
No, that's it. Atlantic is just a leap too far. But with this, for me, is essentially like I like to give readers the building blocks that they can take ownership of the world and kind of run with that. So that if I don't make things too stringent, so that they have their own depictions of characters in their heads, so they become effectively theirs. So I just give them enough that they have enough the character to really understand the key differences between them and everything like that, and the things that are important for me for them to understand. So characterization, you're an amazing friend, go fuck yourself. So it is so yeah, like the characterization is the biggest thing for me, and that if I was to really point at my world building, the key differentiators between everything is that what are the characters doing, what are the characters' personalities, what are the dialogues, all those sort of things. That's what really works for me. And everything else I kind of leave really vague. And then I love asking people, it's like, describe this character, and if I say it to another person, they will have very different answers. Their personality will line up perfectly, but how they look, how they like their motivations and certain things will completely be interpreted differently, and I absolutely love that. What was the other question, Michael?
How do you determine when to show and when to tell?
Sometimes they need to be led towards certain plot points, or they need to be really kind of showcased. So that freedom that I love to give for open interpretation sometimes needs to be narrow focused on certain things that are important, so they're not blindsided later. So there's key things where I like, it's like, hey, Chekhov's gun. It's be like, look at that for a moment. And then it's a case of like, oh yeah, it's like open interpretation. Look at that, right? Cool. Okay, next. and then we move on. And I try to kind of do that in a way that doesn't feel glaring and out of place.
Yep.
and that I do it with so many different things and with red herrings that they're like, "Oh, that's important," and I'm like, "What the fuck is that?" So like he'll be like, "I know this is important later," and I'm like, "Oh shit, that's not in book 2, but book 3, baby." Like, you know,
We'll bring that back later.
yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So
I think
continue.
piggybacking on what Brian was saying, if that's okay.
Of course,
Yeah,
make
go
it
ahead.
sound smarter. Please make it sound smarter.
Please.
No, I think it's indicative of your style in some way because you write in a short time frame a lot. Like your books are big, but they don't cover a huge distance in time.
Yes.
And it's interesting because telling is often a mechanism for doing time passage, right? So kind of conveying the reader from one long moment to a different moment with something intervening. I think that's an interesting style choice.
So that's actually my rule for when I choose to do it long or show versus tell. Is this something that is going to be cool and add to the plot, or is it something that is going to be a vehicle to get to the next cool thing? And then if it's something that's cool, I'm going to show that. If it's something that's going to get me a vehicle to the next cool thing, then I'm going to tell it. Yeah.
Mhm.
So thanks for
Yeah,
that, Nathan. Stole my words.
Yeah.
it's also hard.
Always
Like,
glad to help.
I just had a scene where I was like, they're on a boat, and it's interesting because when you're on a boat, you're on okay, yeah. Like I just realized afterwards, I was like, son of a. And then for some reason, the Catalina wine mixer just came in and just like smashing the boat into the side was the second part that had my brain. But anyway, it's when you're on like an old ship. A lot of the times, it's the biggest thing that hits you is holy shit, things are short, but also, and usually the beams, but it's mostly that everything's creaking, everything's moving, and especially in old ships, they're like just like all of the wood is moving against one another, the rope is. So it was interesting of trying to actually show the noises of that experience is kind of a hard one, but at the same time, it really is like it shows that environment more because showing, I think it can also be indicative of drawing the reader into it and making that a concurrent experience, whereas telling can be it's like your before brief. It's like, oh, here's my bit of information. I read this, and then I'm ready for the next thing, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know this about old ships. New ships, though, as soon as the sound gets quiet, things are bad. Like that's a
Yeah.
bad thing on a new ship, newish ship. Old ships, I guess, it would probably be the same, because you're just so used to that constant hum of the engine or the sails or the creaking, and then once that goes away, you're like, oh crap, what just happened?
Yeah, I think that's a good
Who
reason
messed
to
up?
include all those other senses because show gets misinterpreted by new authors a lot as visual, and it is not. Like we dominate visually because we can collect so much information in detail, but there's so much more that you can convey because we have massive like memory connections with our like other senses, olfactory senses and stuff like that, and the sounds of the ship are super important, and you're totally right.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I've been reading a book recently, and they had a chapter that was set to a song, and it was so weird because I put the song on and I read it, and I was like, this is a great thing, like because he kind of anyway. It's a long story, but it was set to a song, and it was amazing to have that like audible connection into the rest of the senses as you read it. So
That's cool.
Understand. So, in that same sense, like show versus tell is a lot easier if you have the right narrator, wouldn't you say?
well,
I mean,
unfortunately, you can't
what's
rely
the
on a
process in
narrator.
choosing that? Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
you can't rely on a narrator, but narrators are important for how you tell a story, because at least for sometimes when you write to a narrator, you're writing. I think Dungeon Crawler Carl is probably the best example of this. Is that they've written to a narrator really, really well, and
Yeah.
I think without Jeff there, I think that series would not have been as popular as it is, unfortunately. But well, unfortunately, anyway, whatever. So I think that they've written really well because Jeff does certain things really, really well, and so like the later books specifically have been very written to Jeff's narration style, and are better for it, I think. But you can, it's kind of hard to force a medium that 30% of the audience, 40% of the audience isn't going to encounter.
Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dinnerman.
there he is. Hey, Dinnerman. But
knew you were
I think
here
another
somewhere.
thing.
Deny it, Matt.
I think the other thing is that when you're looking at like a narrator within the books, it can also tell you a lot about the narrator and I think this is bouncing off a couple of things that we've talked about. Of what do they notice? Because like a lot of my characters are military focused, so they're going to be focused on military things. Then I have other characters who are like alchemists, or they're like magic users. Those are the things that they're looking for first, and so like you'll see like their lenses of it, of like how they come to a problem, the things that they notice are like, it smells like wolfsbane in here. Wolfsbane's usually used for let's say like a knockout potion. Okay, that's really weird because it's also found in this region and it's hard to get it from this region. And so probably like these people would be the people that you get it through, or it's someone from that region. And then it's like, well, that person has tattoos from that region because I studied that area because I was wanting to learn about ingredients. Those kinds of that connection, that whole thought process is just about telling you this person researches a ton. Second, they don't really get outside that much. Third is like, okay, now you've actually created a plot off of just their observations. And that's drawn you through the story, especially because you as the reader, I think this is lovely, is like you fall into that story as well. Because you're getting those pieces of information and they're like, well, this, and then they made their conclusion here, and you're like, yes, that's brilliant. And then they're like, oh, this, and then you've made that conclusion here, and you're like, that's brilliant, because you're following that stream of thought as well. Because one thing that can be really hard with narration, show and tell is that you give information too soon in another method. So then the character doesn't look like they have autonomy, because you have information and you're like, you got to do this, and the character does something else. That's immersion breaking. So that's got to be a hard thing of like a kind of balance there, to go, the character's still smart, you still have a connection with them, and they're making decisions that make sense. So sometimes you actually have to like, oh, I've got this really cool scene, but that scene actually breaks or disturbs the character in such a way that you have to remove it so that they can do it themselves, instead of you just serve up, here's the answer.
So one of the things, sorry, Nathan, do you want to go on?
No, you're good.
So one of the things that I quite like in Quest Academy is that you have this kind of dystopian-esque future. Okay, so you're 60 years after the first demonic outbreak, and now the world is completely overrun by demons. But what you have is like, there's like, how do you name those demons? What would people call them based on the characteristics that they've displayed in combat? So it's like, that's called a leecher, that's called a prowler, that's called a voider, that's a hulker. All of these things is like, what would they actually be? As in like, and you can automatically in your head be like, I think I know the characteristics of each of those things just by the naming convention alone. Now, a leecher, for example, based on the habitat, like it's like, oh, did it come from like fauna and stuff? It's a demonic head of bulbous lettuce. And you're like, with teeth and vine tendrils as it floats towards you to try and kill you. And it's like, oh, it's going to sap all of your internal essence and eat you. So yeah, like I love to have these sort of things of like, there could be other things down the line, or as like a skitter or any sort of things. You just be like, what does it do? What's its defining characteristic? But one of the things that I really like to convey is familiar but different. So that's something that gives you enough of a, yeah, I know what that is. And then kind of invert it ever so slightly with the kind of artistic flair. So this is terrifying when, as an Irish person, I'm writing guns. Because I'm like, this is the moment where I need to make sure that this is fucking immaculate.
Guns and horses, man. Guns and horses.
Oh, I will never fucking ride a horse. They were the first to die. So
Guns and horses. Like, people get weirdly like, you have to be right about guns and horses.
Yeah, it like with the guns though. I was there looking at going like, okay, here's the thing. Like, this is a magically infused legendary grade sniper rifle. Okay, and I have it that it's able to shoot like 5,000 like fucking feet or whatever. It's able to shoot a ridiculous amount of like space. It's not 1,500, it's 5,000 because it's magically infused and everything. And I'm like, someone's gonna be like, actually, the maximum range of a sniper rifle is just like, yeah, maybe 60 years ago with that magic. Fuck off. So, but thankfully, no one has done that. Please don't go and review with that.
Just saying, the longest sniper shot on record is like 7,000 yards.
Meters.
7,000 yards. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I'll take it.
I think it's done by a Marine now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Marine. Yeah.
Factoids.
Yeah.
Canadians like number
4.5 miles, essentially, for those
Yeah.
of you who don't want to like figure that out.
In freedom units.
See, this is why I need to tell and not show. I need to tell you that this will never happen. Okay?
It's actually a good point, right? Because telling can be a way of evading some of these traps. If
Oh,
they're
yeah,
traps
for sure.
you as an author.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. It does not cost 400,000 potatoes.
I think Chatfield also mentioned another good reason to ignore the show don't tell rule is internal dialogue. That's something that's really hard to show without being obnoxious in the detail that you're trying to describe the character going through, when you could just tell the reader their internal thoughts. So, I mean, that
there was a new record set in 2020, by the way. 2022, sorry. 4.4 miles.
Nice.
Oh.
So,
okay, so we're going to continue on. I love the question that JD put out.
I do like money.
What is something interesting, time-consuming that you've researched that didn't make it into the final cut because it broke the show don't tell rule and involved too much exposition? So we'll start with Brian on this one.
If something is interesting and time-consuming that I've researched, it's fucking making its way in there. Like, there is no way. Like, I'm fucking removing that. I just need to like challenge myself to find it in a way that works.
It's interesting.
So it's and this is the thing. If I find it interesting, it's gonna work. Now, I did write in the wrong direction for 40,000 words, and then I was looking at it going like, fuck. So this was a rookie mistake. When I finished book 1, and this was my first ever like book on Amazon, the tempo for the final parts of book 1, I immediately started going into book 2 and kept that tempo. And there was none of this like, kind of like ramping back up. And then I was like, wow, everything is happening so fast. And it's like, go, 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 go. And it was exhausting. And I was like, shit. I need to go back into the like kind of like build back towards it and stuff in the 3-act structure. But yeah. But also I'm totally fine being well actually, because I'm from Ireland. I need to be educated by all these veterans in the space.
I am kind of opposite of that in that I find everything interesting, so I will research everything, and it gets to the point where I did probably 20 hours of research on how plumbing systems work, so I could get a reverse gravity fed system and figure out why someone was wrong when they tried to correct me and tell me that the toilets wouldn't flush.
I
So
aspire to that level of pettiness.
I had to go through and like double down research everything and figure out, yeah, without pumps, this isn't going to be working. And so yeah, I researched way too much. I think the biggest one I did that didn't actually get into it was how to make wadding, which is the stuff you put in between like walls in an old style of building.
Yep.
And then I was finally just like, the game would just make this for him, and I just had wadding made. So I went through like this whole like 20-hour research project on how to make wadding, and then I was like, no, this isn't something that would be fun for a player, and got rid of it.
Sorry, can I just ask on the back of that, what is your favorite hand wavium cop out? Like you're like, magic.
I try not to. Man, I mean, there's a whole lot of hand wavium, like the whole conservation of energy as far as magic goes, and like if you have a fireball, where's all that energy going after you make the fireball, and is it actually heating something up or is it just dissipating? And I just had it dissipating immediately without causing things to burn, which is probably my biggest hand wavium of like, yeah, fire spells don't actually set things on fire because it becomes too strong if you do it that way.
I have a engineering student, well, that's his name on my Discord, and he is way smarter than me. Like he is literally just sharing all of these like reports and documents and like research papers to be like, I really love how Brian, like went around the Heisenberg effect, was really interesting, and I really think that he's using like naming German researchers and stuff of like, and this really proves what Brian's doing here is just like, I love the level of depth he's gone into. I'm like, Jesus fucking Christ, like I've made all this up. And like he's asking like, how did you really manage the internal weave and circuitry, and like obviously this is working as a this and this, so I imagine this effect would really go into cultivation. Like, oh, I need someone to help me. Yeah
I try not to do too much hand wavium, just because my brain doesn't work that way, but like where the energy comes from, that's the biggest. And where does it go?
I kind of hand wave like teleportation. With gravity and time and teleportation get pretty intricate to get into to actually try to justify magical effects. And I was like, I'm just not going to open that can of worms right now.
So I realized after you just said that, I totally broke the laws of physics in general, and by allowing FTL, like FTL between galaxies even. And I just said, no, there's no time dilation. Like time doesn't, like that doesn't happen in this universe.
I have a time dilation story. Literally the most. No, well, yeah, no, doom scrolling. No, I had to figure out. So I was doing. Now this is hard science fiction, so you have to figure out all the math and stuff. And one of it was okay. Well, I'm using sublight engines. And I'm going between star systems, and I was like, okay, well, what's the relativistic speed of the person on the ship and on the planet and on the other planet? And I was like, I figured it all out, and it came down to, and they arrived in 33 years or something like that. And I was just like, son of a bitch. Like I spent like probably like. I had to figure out the actual science behind it. I had to go talk to a couple of people who were way smarter than me about physics and shit. And I was like, how are we doing this? And they're like, well, because of the Doppler effect and because of fucking time dilation and and then this is a body at rest and this is a body movement. And I'm just like, numbers. But yeah, no, that took a really long time to figure out, and it was real bastard. But then I had this piece of information, and I could figure out every single time how long it took them to get places. And I was just like, so it was 157 years later that they came back home, and like the world has completely changed. And then I was like, cool. And there, like, people were like, there's no way it would take that long. And I was like, I will slap you with so many numbers.
No,
You're going to be
it does.
speaking X, Y, and Z.
Like the probe that they launched like in the 70s that's just barely gotten past Pluto.
yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, like
Yeah.
and that's what 60 years, 70 years to get that far.
Go to my
Yeah.
Patreon for all the math.
It's
Yeah.
it's like what's but like,
and then
I
on
think,
Patreon,
the
be
most-
like, no, thank you for your money. I'm sorry I lied. Please stay.
There is no math. It's all magic.
X plus Y dollars equals.
Here's a Venn diagram of how much I really appreciate your support. It's a pie chart. It's 100%. I love you. Stay. Thank you.
It's just a picture of a pie. Thank you.
This has
It's
been my
actually a
TED Talk.
smiley face if you look at it. We just got a couple of pixels.
Show me the pie. Don't tell me about the pie.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry, Nathan. Did I might have jumped in there because I was like, oh, numbers and math and stuff.
0, 1, 2,
No,
3,
you're
4, 5,
good.
6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I've named all the numbers.
10 is actually 1 and 0. So I don't know what
Shut
the
up.
hell you're doing.
Shut
Doubling up digits here.
Shut up, Michael. I was
The
hoping
pedantic
no one would
Nano
realize that I
next.
went too far. All right.
But actually, in Roman numerals, that's down as X. So
Oh,
if
Roman numerals don't matter because they're dead.
yeah,
Wow.
and they suck. Also,
not in my world, bitch.
Rome never. Funny thing, Rome didn't have. Okay, it's hypothesized and it's pretty true that 0 was not a number or a known
Placeholder.
quantity.
Technically, 0
Yeah.
isn't a number; it's a placeholder.
Yeah, but it was made by India in like I think it's like the 800s or something like that.
Binary is livid right now, Xander. It's like, is it like you just removed half the fucking language?
Yeah, I want to say it came from Arabic,
Mhm.
and it's it was the Arabic numeral system that I think was adopted in 600 AD that they started using the number 0.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you know the way that question from earlier about like, have you ever researched something and then had to remove from book? That doesn't apply to humans like me. Xander, on the other hand, abso-fucking-lutely.
I said that I like I said I research everything. So
I will say that sometimes I will take a bunch of research and punt it to a different project because it doesn't belong in the current project. Like I'm an avid home brewer. I enjoy the actual chemistry of brewing and the timing and all the changes that happen. And it's too, the after effects are nice too. But like, it just didn't fit the current series in any elegant way. And it actually became the central idea on a different project. And so we'll see if that ever happens, but
I think that's also a real test of a story of if the story dictates, hey, I don't need this information, or that you wanted to go down this route because you're like, oh, that'd be really cool. But your characters, you're like, my characters wouldn't actually fall down the pitfall that much. Which, you know, you only do that after the 20th hour of researching it. And you're like, come on. Like,
yeah.
really? All right, well, I'm going to put that in my notes. You use that later, I hope. Yeah,
But no, like, the thing is, the one thing I absolutely hate that I've done is that my main character is an appraiser. And one of the things I did in the first, like, appraisal document, the stat screen that I put in, was dimensions of things, measurements. And then it was the thing is, like, he makes something in book 2, which has a floor area. And I was there trying to calculate that based on a sloped incline. And then I'm there going like, okay, Brian, we need to use our brain now. Let's do this. And then it was like 2 minutes later, ChatGPT be like, what is the floor plan of this if this? And then look at it and be like, I hope you didn't lie to me. And just got Chatfield and Dimmy to check it because we're in Mallorca at the time. I'm like, is this math? And Chatfield was like, sure. And I'm like, cool.
It's like that's eyeballing it, but yeah.
Xander, please don't read my books.
it's just for my own edification. Like it doesn't anyway.
It's not hand wave him, it's eyeballing him.
For 14
Right.
for nomadic tribe with only one arm.
So This next question, I'm not sure it's a question, but I'm going to bring it up with you guys. I think it's from Bob McBoberson.
Real name.
Yep, that
he
sounds
says,
real.
His
what
name's
I'm
Robert
mostly
Robertson, but he hates
curious
it, so
about-
it's Bob McBoberson.
What I'm mostly curious about is how mega writers would deal with these shorthand rules, like Pirate Abba or Kuznets. Writing 6K to 10K words a day has to be a lot closer to stream of consciousness writing than engineering everything to show more than you tell.
So I can
So,
I don't know
I
with the two
I
examples
don't know how
that
to
you
answer
used,
that.
but I do know I've watched Dakota Kraut do 10,000 words in a day, and he has a lot of planning before the writing, and so he does it all before, and then it's just a lot of like learning your style and learning how to do it on the first try. You can't do that as like a newbie author. It definitely takes a skill set that you have to learn to acquire, and yeah.
I think it's also dependent on the information, right? If you know that information, you can weave that easily within your day-to-day life, or it's like something that's easily accessible to you, then that's going to be a lot easier to pull in. I would say like it really like everyone's going to write at a different amount of words per day or write a different amount of hours per day. I think that really the biggest thing is that telling can actually be a great, like showing and telling can be a great tool. It just depends on how they write their book, right? And it also, the way that they write, how they do it is indicative of their style. I think, yeah, it all depends on how they want to do it. I think so it's a stylistic choice. Like I personally like showing more than telling, but there is stuff that I'll just tell because I'm like, this is the easiest to do it. I don't want to spend 3 hours thinking about how to write the perfect sentence to get it across. I can just go, here's a bit of information. It's not going to really add anything coming from the characters, but it's like vis-a-vis through the characters kind of thing. Whereas Brian likes to go, here's all the information through the characters right here, right now. Sorry, Nathan.
No, you're good. I think part of what those mega writers have done is they tweaked some lever in their writing quality. Like one of the many things available to us as authors, like building tension or attracting us to a character or setting up an interesting world. They've taken one of those levers and dialed it to 11 to earn a massive amount of trust from the readership. And that readership will then follow them even if the writing style sometimes puts them off, which I've seen, right, in reviews. They're like, come on, can we get to the next good bit? But writing is such a subjective art that the next good bit is different for different people. And so they've managed to turn a couple of dials really high and drag a couple of different readerships through. And those two readerships often will beat each other up over their disagreements, but they still are in it so firmly that they'll follow that author through almost anything. And eventually it will fall apart for some authors. Some have managed to maintain it for years, and it's amazing to have that talent. Part of it is very firmly having a POV that they're in it for a given moment, because that head is where that set of readers wants to dwell. And then they switch POVs and use that to keep dragging the reader through different sections of the book. I think that's one of the tricks.
I want to bounce off that if it's okay, because I did one of the laziest things I've ever done and people loved it. So in Wildcards, which I wrote over on Royal Road, that was my first kind of foray into all of this. And when I was like, oh fuck, this is going to be really difficult to do the battles and stuff. Like there's so much moment to moment in a VR MMO, and there's big cast and there's like all this stuff. How do I do this? So I created a character who was a shoutcaster called Pentaprice. And he essentially literally just sat screaming like, okay, here's the analysis of everything that's happening. It's like bang, 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 bang. Here's the action to action moment. And then literally like talking to the crowd, being like, and what's going to happen next? Is it going to do this, going to do that? And I use that, and people were like, holy fucking shit. I want to literally see, I see this as a movie of this guy. He just describes everything that's going to happen or is happening, rather than me having to do it in the POV of the characters actually doing it. And then you just get to snap back into the action, and people are like, oh my God, I'm so hyped for this. And I'm like, cool. Oh, thank God. So I totally get that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think that's a lovely thing of where like you found a lovely kind of tool that's actually like you go like, this is what I don't want to do, and that's allowed you to bring in a whole new storyline or a new presentation that actually fits your story really well. Because I think that can also be a thing for authors is, all right, how do I get this across and in a way that is entertaining not only for the reader but for myself?
Well, and that's, I think, actually the whole basis of lit RPG is finding a mechanic that will let us tell, using those, game screens as opposed to showing and having that as an option. I think that's like the whole point of lit RPG is we have that like very explicit tell moment every couple chapters, and obviously it works for people. Like Nathan was saying, everything is subjective. Everything in writing is subjective. Like what some people like, other people are going to hate, and vice versa.
Yeah, you can see some people bounce off of lit RPG because those ruin their immersion. They want the sensory immersion full blown, and other people love it because it gives them something to wrestle with other than the narrative. They can also wrestle with the system and its implications and its possibilities. And they're both totally valid.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah,
my
and I
mother
think it's
read Quest Academy, and like she's not a big reader, her own self-admission, and she reads like maybe romance or like and I was like, don't read this. And I was like, first of all, mortifying, there's a fade to black in 15, like chapter 15. And then she's going to be reading into names she recognizes. I'm like, don't do that. And but when she was reading it, she literally was like, Brian, I just skipped past all of those the number things. And I was like, cool, that's totally fine. She's like, but the dialogue, oh my God, I love the characters. I just want to hear more about them. And I'm like, oh, that's lovely. It's just a really nice thing because I didn't think it was actually going to be a real story. I thought it was all going to be that Magic and Dragons shite. And I was like,
I can hear your mom saying that too.
Yeah. And just like probably with a glass of wine, being like, I thought it'd be like all the Magic and Dragons shite, but it was actually a story. And I'm like, thanks, man.
You actually wrote a real book.
It's actually kind of interesting of when you said that and what you guys have been saying about the numbers. With lit RPG especially, it is very much show and tell are two things very much into it. Now there's always a thing of people are like, well, show, don't tell. And I think that rule can go a little too far because, if you show everything all the time, you're like, can we go do something new, please? Like, I've been.
Can we get to second semester, Brian?
Well, and that's and that's why I don't.
Go fuck yourself, Nathan. I'm not lying.
Wrong stream. Anyway, Sandy.
But I think that's what I don't like about Hemingway is that it's show all the time, and it's just this very long-winded, like, I'm like, get to the point, like, catch the damn fish. And so yeah, I think that, like I said, there's like when we try to like prescribe what is or is not good fiction to people, that's when we get in problems. But anyway.
But that is one of the things I do with the stat tables. I'm always conscious that people might not read them. So I always try and encapsulate what they're seeing, what are the key changes and things like that as they experience and interpret what's in the stat blocks. So that it's like, because if you go on the most basic definition of show, it's like, yeah, I've just showed you the fucking character screen. As in, there you go, mate. But I do like to really kind of like layer that in so that even if the stat tables weren't there, you are still experiencing everything.
Ryan, I think that tells you more about your mom than it tells you about your story, or maybe about your story.
Fair. Very fair.
Yeah.
I write for one audience. I want her approval so much.
It is good to reinforce what the character experiences as a result of the stat changes, because I think that scaling is hard to keep in mind sometimes for a reader all the way through. And so them going, oh shit, I can do X, Y, Z now than I couldn't before.
I think specifically that's something that we've added, we as a genre have added in as we got more audible and narration, is because we switched away kind of from the stat root blocks and we've now gone to like summaries of the changes or deltas.
Yeah, definitely. The deltas are a bit, I think they catch on well.
Yeah, deltas are amazing. I love deltas.
What's a delta?
It's just
So
telling the system.
The change between point A and point B.
Ah, thank you.
okay. So as much as I'm enjoying every moment of this, I got to give you guys plenty of time to be able to make announcements of what it is coming up for you. Like, I know Michael is constantly releasing new books everywhere. And Brian, I'm so looking forward to what you're doing next. Nathan, so
Never
let's
heard
start.
Not excited about
I've heard of you. I've heard of you, Nathan, so much. Like, I love your book.
Just the
but,
one. Just the one though.
No.
Hey, I was gonna say, anybody that talks about those epic authors, they're talking about you guys. They're not talking about every other J.R.R. Martin and type out. They're talking about you because you're the Lit RPG masters. So just take it.
I'm on the wrong channel.
Zed, do you
All
want
right,
to start?
so-
Bitch, I tell, don't show.
Yeah.
I'm on the
So
wrong panel.
I'm currently working on book 4 of the Red Mage series, and then another project on the side that I can't talk about. But book 4 of the Red Mage series, so hopefully get that out someday. I don't write as fast as these guys do, so especially that guy right down there, Michael.
I'm probably the next slowest.
So yeah, that's about all I got going.
Nice.
Yeah.
So,
Nathan? So as the next slowest, I'll go next. I'm working on Dungeon Accountant. So Dungeon Accountant is a story set sideways from the main series of Shadowcroft, which was written by Aaron Michael Ritchie and James Hunter, and I'm co-authoring Dungeon Accountant with Aaron Michael Ritchie. And so that's a world where the dungeon cores are trying to defend the Tree of Souls from raiding dungeoneers who are sucking it dry of Apothos. So we're like, well, what about the bureaucratic support system around these dungeons, right, to help them do their job better? So in our world, the Department of Universal Dungeon Efficiency has auditors that go to the dungeons and help them do their job better by analyzing their effectiveness. Most of those audit teams are actually other dungeons that go through the university system and support them. But Audit Team 6, who are largely discredited, are actually ex-raiders of dungeons. So they have some issues with the interactions they have when they go try to tell the dungeon how to do its business. So yeah, that book 1 is submitted completely. So hopefully we'll get a publishing date sometime in early next year. Book 2 is in final edits, and book 3 is fully drafted and up next for edits. So we should have a trilogy coming out soon enough. Yeah. Excited about it.
As the next slowest. Sorry, Chatfield. So I write big books, and I cannot lie. I know, I got there before you got fucked.
Fucking just score myself out on that one.
Yeah. I've been hanging around you guys too much. So I like book 1 of Quest Academy is 204,000 words. Book 1 is 213. Book 2 is 204. Book 2, I finished the edits this morning and sent them in after dev edits and stuff like that. Huge. Like, it took me much longer because I was reading it and really enjoying it. And I'm like, this is a good fucking book. And I just hope the readers enjoy it too. Like I write for myself, and I'm like, oh, this is brilliant. What happens next? Oh, motherfucker, Brian. And it's like, oh, I gotta write it. So yeah, book 2. I don't know what I'd say. It'll be early next year. That it'll be kind of coming out to release. There's still a few things that need to be done on the other side. And I'm cracking into book 3 at the moment. I had previously in other interviews and stuff, I'd been saying, like, you know what, like I'll do the first trilogy of Wildcard of Quest Academy, and then maybe look at go back to Wildcards, because hedging my bets, because I've no idea how Quest Academy would do. I've had to reassess that. So Quest Academy currently, and thank you everyone, is at 2,277 ratings reviews with a 4.8 average in 3 months, and that is blowing my mind. So I always said, like, and people are like, oh, I don't know how he's going to wrap this up in a trilogy, and I'm like, no, that was never the intention. We're gonna sprawl. We're gonna saga this. So, like, it's the semester 1 trilogy of a 3-year degree, and like, I have plans for when they graduate. That's why I'm introducing everyone. But yeah, look, we'll see how this goes. We're gonna take it one book at a time. I'd love to be a 3 books a year author. I have a full-time job at the minute, so it's really kind of difficult to do that. So, like, I'm pacing at the minute at around 500,000 words a year. So that's roughly 2 books and a bit. So yeah.
I hate you a little bit.
It just works out better that way. But
yeah. Okay, actually, Xander, read my books Michael. Then. Read the books, and you'll hate me a little bit less. You're like, oh, this guy is fucking winging it. Hop in the Discord and talk with the engineer student.
All right, Michael.
You didn't bypass the Heisenberg effect. Just stumbled right into it. Sorry, Michael.
It's gonna look like a Warhammer universe in there between the two of them. So I'm currently, I guess, we just wrapped up the Builder's Legacy series. We just launched a Kickstarter. We just finished a Kickstarter for 10 Realms books, all of them numbered and signed. That was a lot. That was a whole heck of a lot of craziness. My cousin, I was like, hey, they don't want to drop it off at my apartment. He's like, no shit, it's 58 friggin' boxes. I was like, yeah. So I'm using your house. So thankfully, I did that to my cousin, which was great. But yeah, we got to do that, which was a lot of fun. It's super crazy to be able to sign things and send it out, which is awesome, but nuts. But yeah, so what we're working on right now, we're working on the Four Horsemen series. And the Four Horsemen series is out on Royal Road. I think we have something like, I don't know, like 200 pages or something like that. That's coming out right now. So you can check that out. We will be releasing it on bookstores later. But for right now, we're just doing it on Royal Road because we were like, it's as many people as possible can get accessible to it. And we were just like, it's kind of fun to be on Royal Road. Everillia and 10 Realms both started there. But it was just too much to do the writing and putting on Royal Road and everything else. And since we've built out more infrastructure to do that kind of stuff, we can. So yeah, we got that going on. And then mostly it's translations that we have coming out. So there's a lot of German for the 10 Realms. We got German for Emerillia coming out, which is going to be really cool. Supposedly we've got Italian, but that's a thing. And then, we're just going to be doing Four Horsemen and hanging out with that. It's a D&D fantasy style, like low cultivation gamelet, but it's the kind of thing of like, this one's going to be a slow burn of, we have 4 characters who are reincarnated as their second life, and they're kind of pissed. And, their name is War, Conquest, Famine, and Death. So, yeah, it's really cool. And, like, book 1, I've just, like, getting to the end of it, and they have, like, barely touched their backstory. And that's pretty epic. So, yeah, having a lot of fun with that. And, yeah, that'll be coming out, I think in December, book 1 is. Yeah, something like that.
Cool.
That's exciting. Okay.
One thing
So-
before we absolutely mandatorily like wrap up.
Yeah, you're fine.
Myself and Michael Head have a slot in, I think, 4 hours and 15 minutes. Xander, Michael, Nathan, if you just want to fucking drink and hop in for another 30 minutes and just like more
So
the
you're saying,
merrier.
you're saying I should walk over to Michael's house and just like start drinking with him?
Yes, absolutely.
I like it.
I think you should do that. But yeah, as in like, why not? As in like, we're going to be talking anyway. The more the merrier.
Cool.
Birds.
I'm there.
So, if we didn't get to any of your questions, we are going to continue this on Discord. So, put your questions there. Here, these guys will answer when they get the chance. But we're so glad that we have this chance to panel with these four amazing authors. Thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing y'all in our next panel.
Yeah,
It was a lot of
thanks.
fun.
Yeah, thank you, Kyle, for
Thanks,
having
everybody.
us, and thank you everyone for enjoying.
Appreciate it.
Guys.
See you later.